Good morning, students, and welcome back to the digital classroom of Vikram Juneja. In today's video, I shall deal with the next of the short stories, that is Chief Seattle's speech. This short story is in your syllabus. We will be doing it in 3 parts. It is a very fascinating story. First of all, we need to know the context in which the speech was delivered by Chief Seattle. Now, Chief Seattle lived between 1786 to 1866. He was a public leader and the chief of Native American tribes, that is the Red Indian tribes, by the name Suquamish and Duwamish tribes. American city Seattle was subsequently named after Chief Seattle. So children, you can well imagine the impact on American way of life and the American politics Chief Seattle had left. Now he is known for this speech. He delivered in 1854, 12 years before he passed away. This speech he delivered is also referred to as the letter. Now, children, you also need to know as to why was this speech delivered in the first place. The speech was a response to the American government land treaty to buy the native lands that was proposed by the person called Isaac Stevens, the governor of Washington. Now, why is it considered effective? Why is the speech so effective? It is because it is regarded as a powerful plea for the respect of the Native American rights, in this case, the Red Indians, and also for respecting the environmental values. Now, we also need to know, children, as to why is this speech relevant even today. It is actually happening in the world. It's happening in India. Powerful political leaders and corporates are trying to grab the lands from the tribes in India in the states like Chhattisgarh and Odisha. Now, they are mineral-rich territories, and the land is being grabbed. The amount which is given in lieu of this land is a very low amount, and this is happening even today. Moreover, the industries are being built on these lands. It is leading to the environmental degradation. So we can say that this speech is relevant even today. Chief Seattle criticizes the white man's obsession of occupying land which belongs to someone else. It conveys a very imperialistic kind of an attitude, and that is the way of development without safeguarding the environment. Again, this speech is relevant today, for we all are hearing and talking about global warming, the climate change, essentially because of the kind of policies being adopted by various countries, which are resulting in degradation and damage to the environment. Chief Seattle delivered his speech in his native language called Lushoot Seat. I'll spell it for you. Lushootseet. Now, this is the native language of the Red Indians, and it was subsequently translated and passed from generation to generation. So, children, you need to know that the authenticity of the original text is not quite established. What we are reading is not the word-to-word translation. Now, the oldest available record of this document is by Henry A. Smith. His transcripts were published in Seattle Sunday Star in 1887. And that is what you are reading now. Now we shall go about reading the text, but before we read the text, I must tell you that the text was known as Chief Seattle's Treaty Oration of 1854. This Chief Seattle's speech has five-fold theme. The five themes of this in the speech are attachment of Red Indians to their land. Number 2, supremacy of the white man. Number 3, focus on the environmental and ecological sustainability. Number 4, a different world view of whites and the Red Indians. And number 5, which is the most important theme in the speech, that is the concept of God. So children, we are going to go about reading. Now this was with regard to the introduction to this particular chapter, Chief Seattle speech. Now we shall start reading this speech. I'll give you the line by line explanation to this speech. Okay, we shall read the text now. Yonder sky that has wept tears of compassion upon my people for centuries untold, and which to us appears changeless and eternal, may change. Today is fair, tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds. Now what Chief Seattle is trying to say in these lines is that nature has been a great sympathizer, not only for the Red Indians, but also for the entire human race, for the centuries untold. Nature has given us everything we need to live on this earth, but it may not always remain the same. Though the condition appears to be eternal and changeless at this point in time, it may finally change. He says that if we do not respect nature, ultimately we'll have to bear the brunt of nature. Now this is Seattle's warning against the rapid progress of Western civilization, the white people's way of progressing, disregarding the need to protect nature. He says, my words are like stars that never change. Whatever Seattle says, the great chief at Washington can rely upon with as much certainty as he can upon the return of the sun or the seasons. Now he says, but my words are not going to change. So he's assuring the chief at Washington, the great chief at Washington, that he can rely upon, he can bank upon the words spoken by Chief Seattle. He says, we can bank upon the fact that the sun, when it sets down, it appears again in the sky. Like we can bank upon the fact that when the seasons go, they come back. Similarly, we can bank upon the fact that whatever Chief Seattle says is going to be done. The white chief says that the big chief at Washington sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. This is kind of him, for we know he has little need of our friendship in return. So Chief Seattle is a little satirical because he knows that the white chief is going about grabbing the lands of the tribes. So he says that though he has actually been very diplomat by sending us the hand of friendship, but I can very well imagine that he doesn't need our friendship. He doesn't need our goodwill. It is kind of him to have sent the hand of friendship, the greetings of friendship and goodwill. But I know at the back of my mind that he doesn't need any of those. He doesn't need our friendship, doesn't need our goodwill. His people are many. They are like grass that covers vast prairies. My people are few. They resemble the scattering trees of the storm-swept plains. So he's making another comparison. He says, we talk about the people of the white chief. They are increasing in number, they are increasing in power. They can be compared to the grass of the prairies. Like that is innumerable, like the grass is innumerable there. You cannot count it. Similarly, we cannot count the number, the growing number of people of the white chief. But as far as the people of Chief Seattle are concerned, they are diminishing. They are like the storm-swept plain. When the storm sweeps the plain, and what is left out after the storm is the number is actually compared to the number of people Chief Seattle has at present. The great and I presume good white chief sent us the word that he wishes to buy our land but is willing to allow us enough to live comfortably. This indeed appears just, even generous, for the red man no longer has rights that he need respect, and the offer may be wise also, as we are no longer in need of an extensive country. So he says that the great, and he presumes that the great chief at Washington is good as well, and whatever proposal he has sent, he is going to adhere to that proposal. He is proposing to buy the land of Chief Seattle, but in return, he is willing to allow Chief Seattle's people to live there comfortably. He says it appears very, very generous of the white chief, but the red man no longer has the rights. He believes he doesn't have the right. He doesn't need the respect, for he believes that he has diminished. Now they have diminished in number. They have their situation has deteriorated to an extent that they do not even deserve respect. So he's kind of a little more satirical over here. He says, but it's so kind of him, the chief at Washington, to send such a proposal. So he says that our people do not need an extensive country. We are fewer in number and we are happy living in the land which we have got. There was time when our people covered the land as the waves of a wind-ruffled sea cover its shell-paved floor, but that time long since passed away with generations, the tribes that are now but a mournful memory. So he's reflecting and about the past. He says there was one time when our people, the people of Chief Seattle, of this tribe, the Red Indian tribe, they were like the wind-ruffled sea that covered the sea-paved floor. So there was hardly any place where the people of Red Indians, Red Indian tribes were not there. But that was long time ago. That time is just a mournful or a sad memory now, which stays in the memory lane of the people who are left behind. I'll not dwell on nor mourn over our untimely decay, nor reproach my pale-faced brothers with hastening it, as we too may have somewhat to blame. So he says, I'm not blaming, I'm not mournful, I'm not going to reflect on the past and be sad about it, because I understand at the back of my mind that if we have reduced in number, if our power has decreased, has diminished, our people are also somewhat to blame. Youth is impulsive. So he says youth loses patience. When our young men grow angry and at some real or imaginary wrong and disfigure their faces with black paint, it denotes that their hearts are black and that they are often cruel and relentless. And our old men and old women are unable to restrain them. Thus it has ever been. Thus it was when the white man began to push our forefathers ever westward. But let us hope that the hostilities between us may never return. So he says our youth is impulsive. They have actually fallen prey to anger, to hatred, and they have disfigured their faces. They have turned their faces black, and they have their hearts actually have turned black, and where they have been cruel and relentless, ultimately they have not even realized as to how their old men and their old women in their families think about them, or they have not, the old people have not been able to restrain them, to stop them from being so cruel, from being so relentless, from being so heartless. Okay, and they have reached their own doom with their own actions. Thus it has ever been, he says, and even it started the time when the white men, in search of their extensive territories, they pushed the Red Indians westward. So he believes that these hostilities which are there between them, the fights which are there between them, they should never return. We would have everything to lose and nothing to gain. At this point in time, they have reduced in number to an extent that he says that we have everything to lose. We cannot gain with such hostilities. We would like to live in peace. Revenge by young men is considered gain, even at the cost of their own lives. But old men who stay at home in times of war and mothers who have sons to lose know better. He says revenge actually is considered to be the best option by the young men, but they fail to realize that when they die or when they do not come back, their mothers who are waiting for them, their fathers who are waiting for them, they actually know the pain and the suffering they have had to bear on account of losing their only son. Okay, our good father in Washington, for I presume he is now our father as well as yours, since King George has moved his boundaries further north, our great and good father, I say, send us word that if we do as he desires, he will protect us. His brave warriors will be to us a bristling wall of strength, and his wonderful ships of war will fill our harbors, so that our ancient enemies far to the northward, the Haidas and the Simshians, will cease to frighten our women, children, and old men. He says our good father, Washington, and he presumes that he's their father as well now, because of course he's buying the land. In lieu of buying the land, he is going to be powerful enough to control that land. I'm talking about the great chief at Washington. So Chief Seattle says that we will lose our control on that land. The control will be of the white chief, and of course ultimately he'll become the father of those people, the people of Red Indians also. He says that this is an offer which he has come up with, that in lieu of the land which he is going to take, he will protect the territory of Red Indians, and he will protect, he will stand there. The armies of the white men will stand as the bristling wall, as the never breaking walls of strength, and they will save the Red Indians from their ancient enemies, the Red Indians' ancient enemies by the name Haidas and Simshians, who had been troubling their women, their children, their older men. So he says, in reality, he will be our father and we will be his children. But can that ever be? He says, can this situation ever arise? Does it not sound diplomatic? Is it going to be that he will actually be the protector? The chief at Washington will actually be the protector of Red Indians. He says, your God is not our God. Your God loves your people and hates mine. So he's blaming. He says that God has been partial here. His God, the God of white chief or the white men, is a protector of only the white men. He hates the red men. He folds his strong protecting arms lovingly about the pale face and leads him by the hand as a father leads an infant son. He says like the God of white men actually folds his protecting arms against the white men, so all the pale-faced white men who need protection, like a father protects his infant son by holding his fingers. But he has forsaken his red children. He says that God has forsaken, has left his red children out if they really are his. It's doubtful if the Red Indians are really the children of the God of white men. Our God, the Great Spirit, seems also to have forsaken us. He says that our God, if we consider our gods a separate God, that God has also left us. It seems has left us. He's talking in context of the situation he has at hand. His people have reduced. He has become weak. He cannot protect his own territory. Your God makes your people wax stronger every day. Soon they will fill all the land. Our people are ebbing away like a rapidly receding tide that will never return. He says the God of white men is making the white men more powerful, and they are sweeping the entire area. As far as the God of Red Indians is concerned, he has forsaken them. Okay, and we are kind of reducing in number as the receding tide, as a tide which comes and never returns. It returns actually, and of course there's nothing left of that tide afterwards. So he says my people are also reducing in the same manner. The white man's God cannot love our people, or he would protect them. They seem to be orphans who can look nowhere for help. He says the white man's God is not protecting our people, and we consider ourselves orphans who have nowhere to go. How can we be brothers then? How can your God become our God and renew our prosperity and awaken us in us dreams of returning greatness? He says, how can I consider your God to be my God then? Because we are also looking for prosperity. We also want to return to the same greatness as we had once, but that seems to be only a mournful memory. If we have a common heavenly Father, he must be partial, for he came to his pale faced children, we never saw him. If he came to his pale faced children, if he had not been partial, the God was one. If he had to be equal to the white men and to the red Indians, he would have actually come to his pale faced children who were red Indians also, the pale faced red Indians. He gave you laws, but he had no word for his red children, whose teeming multitudes once filled this vast continent as stars fill the firmament. He says he gave you laws and he gave you directions. Your God gave you directions, but he did not give a word to his red children. He did not give any directions to live to his red children. And the red children were once, they were like the firmament, the stars in the firmament, the stars in the sky. They were like so many in number. Today they have reduced. It seems the God has not given any directions to the red children. Now we are two distinct races with separate origins and separate destinies. There is little in common between us. He says that now I conclude that we are two different races. We have separate origins. We are no longer brothers. We belong to different tribes. And of course, there is nothing common between us. There is little common between us. Okay. To us, the ashes of our ancestors are sacred and their resting place is hallowed ground. Now he talks about the land where his people are buried. He says that our land is sacred to us. We actually worship that land also, where we bury our dead. Okay, you wander far from the graves of your ancestors and seemingly without regret. He says you don't have any regrets, you do not cut a sorry figure, and you stay away from your dead people. You bury them, you forsake them, you do not even go to them, you do not worship them later. Your religion was written upon the tablets of stone by the iron finger of your God, so that you could not forget. He says that your religion was written on the iron table. It means your religion actually was engraved. It is like engraving the words on the tombstones. And then you actually engrave those words, good words for those people, ancestors, and then you forsake them, you forget about them. Okay. He also talks about those particular laws which were actually engraved as testaments by God on the tablets. He says that you actually get to see them and those stay with you forever. But our religion is different. He says the red man could never comprehend or remember it. Our religion is the tradition of our ancestors. He says our religion is not that rigid on the tombstone or on the engraved on the tablets. Our religion is the religion which has been passed on to us by our ancestors. It is in the form of dreams of our old men. It is in the form of the solemn hours in which, or the nights in which, these great spirits passed on some kind of cultural values to us. Okay, the dreams of our old men given them in solemn hours of the night by the Great Spirit, and the visions of our sachems, and is written in the hearts of our people. Okay, the old men are our old people. Our ancestors have given us our religion, and that is engraved in our hearts. It's not engraved on any tombstone, or it's not engraved on any tablet. It is engraved in the hearts of our people. It is going to stay as the value which we have possessed from our ancestors. So children, this was with regard to the explanation, the line by line explanation to the first half of the story. I'll deal with the second half of the story, the line by line explanation to the second half of the story, in my next video. Till then, goodbye. God bless you all. Take care.